Welcome, poetry lovers. I hope you're out there. This is Jim Ransom with a mid-June edition of Morning Jim Poetry. You may remember that we've been reading American 19th century poetry for the last 2 weeks. Today we are going to cross over the Atlantic to England to deal with two poets, Robert Browning and his wife Elizabeth Barrett Browning, also living in the 19th century, but whose poetry was quite a bit different than, say, Longfellow's or Walt Whitman's verses. Personally, I have always really admired Robert Browning's rather intellectual monologue poems. They were in iambic blank verse, and of course, blank verse means they didn't rhyme. Instead, they are stories told in the voice of a single speaker. Oh, there may be other people in the room of the voice, but their response is only hinted at by the single speaker. The story behind the Brownings is very interesting. As they eloped to be married, secretly, of course, contrary to the wishes of her father, and then after they were married at Marylebone Church in London, she returned to the family home in the south of England and stayed with her father for another week, not mentioning the wedding, while Robert made arrangements for them to escape, if you will, to Italy, where they both spent most of the rest of their lives. Elizabeth never again saw her father. She was about 5 years older than Robert Browning. We're going to start with a famous monologue by Robert Browning, which is entitled "The Bishop Orders His Tomb at St. Praxed's Church." Let me get this unwound here a little bit, and we'll be ready to go. This is a long poem, I have to warn you. Because in the 18th century, everybody wrote long poems, but Browning's monologues, blank verse monologues, were probably some of the most entrancing and delightful ones that anybody wrote in the 19th century. The bishop orders his tomb at St. Praxed's Church, Rome, 1500s. Vanity, saith the preacher, vanity, draw around my bed. Is Anselm keeping back? Nephews, sons mine, God, I know not. Well, men would have to be your mother once. Old Gandalf envied me, so fair she was. What's done is done, and she's dead beside, dead long ago, and I am bishop since. And as she died, so must we die ourselves, and thence ye may perceive the world's a dream. Life, how and what is it? As here I lie in the state chamber, dying by degrees. Hours and long hours in the dead night I ask, do I live? Am I dead? Peace, peace seems all. St. Praxed's ever was the church for peace. And so, about the tomb of mine, I fought with tooth and nail to save my niche, you know. Old Gandalf cozened me despite my care. Shrewd was that snatch from out the corner south. He graced his carrion with, God curse the same. Yet still my niche is not so cramped, but thence one sees the pulpit or the epistle side, and somewhat of the choir, those silent seats, and up into the airy dome where live the angels, and a sunbeam's sure to lurk. And I shall fill my slab of basalt there, and neath my tabernacle take my rest. With those 9 columns round me, 2 and 2, the odd one at my feet where Anselm stands. Peach blossom marble all, the rare, the ripe, as fresh poured red wine of a mighty pulse. Old Gandalf with his paltry onion stone, put me where I may look at him, true peach, rosy and flawless. How I earned the prize. Draw close. That conflagration of my church, what then? So much was saved if aught were missed. My sons, ye would not be my death? Go, dig the white grape vineyard where the oil press stood. Drop water gently till the surface sink. And if ye find, ah God, I know not, I bedded in store of rotten fig leaves soft, and corded up in a tight olive frail, some lump, O God of lapis lazuli, big as a Jew's head cut off at the nape, blue as a vein o'er the Madonna's breast. Sons, all have I bequeathed you, villas, all, that brave Frascati villa with its bath. So, let the blue lump poise between my knees, like God the Father's globe on both his hands. Ye worship in the Jesu church so gay, for Gandalf shall not choose but see. And burst. Swift as a weaver's shuttle fleet our years. Man goeth to the grave, and where is he? Did I say basalt for my slab, sons? Black. 'Twas ever antique black I meant. How else shall ye contrast my frieze to come beneath? The bas-relief in bronze ye promised me, those pans and nymphs ye wot of, and perchance some tripod, thyrsus, with a vase or so, the Saviour at his sermon on the mount, St. Praxed in a glory, and one pan ready to twitch the nymph's last garment off, and Moses with the tables. But I know ye mark me not. What do they whisper thee? Child in my bowels, Anselm? Ah, ye hope to revel down my villas while I gasp. Brick door with the beggar's mouldy travertine, which Gandalf from his tomb top chuckles at. Nay, boys, ye love me. All of jasper, then. 'Tis jasper ye stand pledged to, lest I grieve. My bath must needs be left behind, alas. One block, pure green as a pistachio nut. There's plenty jasper somewhere in the world, and have I not St. Praxed's ear to pray horses for ye in brown Greek manuscripts, and mistresses with great, smooth, marbly limbs? That's if ye carve my epitaph aright. Choice Latin, picked phrase, Tully's every word. No gaudy wear like Gandalf's second line. Tully, my masters? Ulpian serves his need. And then how I shall lie through centuries and hear the blessed mutter of the Mass, and see God made and eaten all day long, and feel the steady candle flame, and taste good, strong, thick, stupefying incense smoke. For as I lie here hours of the dead night, dying in state and by such slow degrees, I fold my arms as if they clasped a crook, and stretch my feet forth straight as stone can point, and let my bedclothes for a mort cloth drop into great laps and folds of sculptor's work. And as yon tapers dwindle and strange thoughts grow, with a certain humming in my ears about the life before I live this life, and this life too, popes, cardinals, and priests, St. Praxed at his Sermon on the Mount. The tall, pale mother with her talking eyes, and new-found agate herbs as fresh as day, and marble's language, Latin pure, discreet. Aha, alucisabat, quoth our friend. No, Tully, said I, Ulpian at the best. Evil and brief hath been my pilgrimage. All lapis, all sons. Else I give the Pope my villas. Will he ever eat my heart? Ever your eyes were as a lizard's quick. They glitter like your mother's for my soul. Or ye would heighten my impoverished frieze. Piece out its starved design and fill my vase with grapes and add a visor and a turn. And to the tripod ye would tie a lynx that in his struggle throws the thyrsus down to comfort me on my entablature, whereon I am to lie, till I must ask, do I live? Am I dead? There, leave me, there. For ye have stabbed me with ingratitude to death. Ye wish it, God, ye wish it. Stone, grit stone a-crumble, clammy squares which sweat as if the corpse they keep were oozing through, and no more lapis to delight the world. Well, go. I bless ye. Fewer tapers there, but in a row, and going, turn your backs, aye, like departing altar ministrants, and leave me in my church, the church for peace, that I may watch at leisure if he leers, old Gandalf, at me from his onion stone. As still he envied me, so fair she was. Well, that's a powerful poem, a powerful monologue, I have to say. And it is full of words and phrases that are foreign to most of us, but don't necessarily change the message, which is one of a greedy clergyman, a greedy bishop on his deathbed, talking to his illegitimate offspring. And there are some phrases in there I might mention, because there's this inside joke about the Latin, Tully versus Lupian. I say inside joke because Tully was this bishop's favorite Latin writer, and he thought that his quality of Latin was much better than Lupian, who was the favorite of Gandalf. So from our standpoint, it makes no difference. But that's the reason for those phrases in there. Now, what about onion stone? What does he mean by onion stone? He says it as a criticism. Well, onion stone was the term used in Italy for bad quality marble, which over time peels off at the surface. And of course, lapis lazuli is a blue precious stone, highly valued at that time. And where it came from and exactly how he got it and buried it in the garden, we don't know the story behind that. It's not included in here. But he says that it's obviously something he didn't want anybody to know about, especially not his nemesis, the bishop before him. So then basalt. Basalt is a hard stone that can be polished, and it is shades of black, but he's wanting a certain shade of black. And then he said this odd phrase, ye wot of. And what he meant was, you are the ones who thought of this, and you know about my desires. And then at the end, what about an entablature? What is that? Well, it's an architectural piece that fits at the top of a marble column. And you've seen lots of entablatures on various structures, including our governmental structures in Washington, D.C. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about Elizabeth Barrett Browning. In her day and his day, she was thought of as the better poet. And when they had visitors in their villa in Tuscany, where they lived in Italy, people would point to Robert Browning and say, he's the husband of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. He was not appreciated very much compared to Elizabeth. Emily Dickinson, in fact, had a framed picture of a painting of Elizabeth Barrett Browning in her study in America. It was the only such picture of a poet that she had in her house. Elizabeth was a classical scholar, completely self-taught, because her father was only willing to have her learn how to sew and do various kinds of things that nice women were supposed to know how to do. And so she learned Latin and Greek, and incidentally along the way, Italian. And she made translations of classical poems into English, which were published. Her own poetry was perhaps at its peak in a book titled Sonnets from the Portuguese. So I'm going to read one of those. And it's one that is probably the best known of all of her sonnets from the Portuguese. And its title is, How Do I Love Thee? Let Me Count the Ways. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight for the ends of being an ideal grace. I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. I love thee with a passion put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with a love I seemed to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life. And if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death. Well, that's a very beautiful poem, and it's always been, over the years, a frequently anthologized poem from Elizabeth Barrett Browning. She died, even though she was older than Robert. She died of fever, some disease, no doubt, that would be curable in today's world, while they were still in Italy, but after they'd been there for quite a few years. I think she was in the neighborhood of 55 when she died. Robert then took their son and went off to London, where he spent most of the rest of his days. All right, that's it for today. And I hope that you all will enjoy your Browning, should you be moved to get some of it for yourselves and read it. I would certainly encourage that. We're not going to have a test next period, however. I don't know what poems we're going to have next week, but they'll be good ones. You can be sure of it. Please listen. Bye now.